But his name's Stan. Is his name actually Stanford, or is that Gideon's version of it?
It's genuinely have no idea, mate.
I think it is Stanford. I like Stanford.
Either way, don't look it up.
Okay.
All right.
Don't look up anything to do with Gravity Falls.
Yeah, genuinely. And even talking about it is scary because you're probably gonna have shit appear in your feed now.
Yes, it is. It's so crazy that that's like a real thing.
Yeah.
We actually, people really don't realize that we live in an actual dystopia. I think.
Yeah, but it's like there's no like person behind it, right? Like at no point in time is a person.
There are people behind it.
Yeah, but no one sees your data. A machine listens, a machine takes it, a machine sells it to another machine who then uses that to create an ad and fucking send it to you. Like pick out an ad. Like it's all machines, nanomachines, so like
Nano machines, son. No, that's what I wanted to find. Apparently, the Department of Homeland Security is considering a reality TV show pitch that would put immigrants through a series of challenges to compete for US citizenship.
that sounds good to me.
Yeah, it sounds great. That sounds like exactly what we need.
It's like a
I
bit
don't
of
mean
good
that,
old
by the
fashioned
way.
fun.
I don't mean that. For the record,
Good old fashioned fun.
F is for friends who do stuff together. U is for uranium. Bombs.
Bomb.
Made in a bomb factory.
3, 2, 1. Oh. Welcome
Now I feel weird.
to the episode. The big 00. The big cheese.
God, that number. If I had that many dollars, I'd be a rich man. God.
You would not be able to buy much because it's in dollars.
No, that's like, what is that? That's like 2 like Werther's originals. It's like,
I mean, it is like 70 something quid.
yeah, it's about that. So it is literally like Doom the Dark Ages premium edition, I guess. Actually, no, not premium edition. The premium edition is like 90 quid. So, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. I guess you could buy the premium edition upgrade twice and then get a couple Werther's originals after that. That would work.
Yeah.
You could also buy. I don't know if you could buy the like the full like 100% all DLC package for Deep Rock. I can't remember if we established that was
like
worth
118 quid.
Yeah, I think we established it's probably a bit too much. I think
a little bit.
Because it's like, why would you? Basically, it doesn't actually make sense to buy that, in my opinion, at any point. If you know what I mean, because it's like, absolutely not. Should you ever buy something like that before, like to acquire the game for the first time, right?
Yeah.
But then you wouldn't get it after that point either. The only reason you would is if you're kind of nuts and you want to get it for someone else, right? And you so sincerely believe maybe they've already played with you or played on your account or something like that. It's really hard to conceptualize actually why you would buy something like that. And that sounds kind of weird because it's all like valid, like DLC. But it makes far more sense to me to actually buy like a deluxe edition of something else, like something like Doom, rather than a thing where it's like, oh, you're literally spending like 3 times the amount of the game to get a bunch of cosmetics and the game.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know. As in, I don't think bundles like that are weird, but I do think they're weird. I do think it's a little bit strange to package them with the game itself, though. That's the part that I find a little bit confusing.
I just think it's like, if you don't have a bundle like that, it was equally weird. So, like at the same kind of time as people are so used to, like everything you can buy in a game in a bundle. You just call it there.
Yeah, it's
And
kind of
if you
it's not there to. It's a little bit fucked up because it's kind of there to be very like obtusely not a smart purchase almost. But it's like some people
yeah,
will buy this, and so therefore it's worth
better
putting this
to have it
bundle out
there and
there.
get the
And
money than not and not.
I don't I I wouldn't even begrudge much bigger companies for doing that necessarily. So I'm hardly going to not go ship. Um, but that's enough talking about the number 100. It's enough. It's not really though, is it? Don't have much of a
Uh,
choice. It's going to be very a
yeah.
100 years ago. That's when this
Hey,
all started.
didn't a show was it Phineas and Ferb, I think, the 100th episode. They said like 100 times, I think.
Oh god, that sounds like something they would do.
Well, I
Um,
think Family Guy, I think they killed 100 people in their 100 episode.
oh
And
my
they said
god.
that they'd all be important, but like all but one was, and even that one was like barely important.
They said they were going
Basically,
to kill 100 important characters. They don't have that many
yeah. And then
characters.
they did like they killed like a couple people, and then a bus full of like 90 people gets crashed
Yeah,
near
yeah,
the
yeah,
end,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then like I think Joe Swanson's satanic brother gets killed, who was in like one episode,
Yeah,
and then he gets pulled down to hell, and he's like, hell yeah. And then, but then I think he's like, oh no, wait, this is hell. Oh god, screams,
it's like The
and then
Simpsons
that's
being
it.
like, we're going to kill a major character, and it's like Hank Scorpio, or something.
You know damn well people would be fucking. Like, isn't that like the crazy guy from that one
Yeah, he's
episode that
awesome,
people
but the point
fucking
is,
love?
like, if they, he hasn't been in the show since he's been like, I think he's actually been in 2 episodes. Actually, I think. But it's like, oh, we're going to kill a really important character, and Hank Scorpio shows up and gets shot in the head. He doesn't even say anything. It's like, oh, why'd you do that to Hank Scorpio? He is amazing though. I haven't even watched the episode like fully. I've just watched like Hank Scorpio moments on YouTube, right? Um, but it's like 10-minute compilation though, so it's like half the episode's runtime. It's just literally every moment that he's on screen, because
Yeah.
it's just gold.
I know I watched it as a child because we had like a DVD set of it, but I didn't actually. Well, I was trying to watch through Simpsons, and I got to about season 6, and it wasn't on there, so I was kind of surprised.
And you're like, Mum, where's Hank Scorpio? Fuck.
Well,
Like,
no, I
oh, we had
see.
to
It
take
was
out
like
the Hank Scorpio
I
episode because it was too
remember,
good for you. It was too cool. It was too.
I remember the because I know I hadn't actually gotten to the seasons I watched because I remember the ending of that episode. It was like I think it ended with like "I always love you" playing. I remember that.
That yeah, I remember that
And
episode as well.
yeah, the episode of Mr. Burns as a radioactive alien that
Oh,
genuinely stopped me from sleeping for like 2 or 3 nights after watching.
I love that. I
Um,
love the way children are. Like, it's the genuine lack of a barrier between reality and fiction is bewildering. You know.
yeah,
Obviously it's not because we were kind of all familiar with like experiencing something like that, but it's still crazy. It's like, but then again, sometimes adults still get scared of things on their screens, I guess,
yeah.
even when they're not real. But then it's with children. It's just
It,
so much like you saw. The Simpsons was able to disrupt your sleep. It's like, oh,
yeah.
oh, we're weak. We're a
Well,
weak race.
yeah, there was I watched like there was a Scooby Doo movie we had, and in like the special features there was a spooky camp story because I think that was like the theme of the movie, and in that it was like oh, he's a bunny rabbit who like ate like a meteor and became huge and ate someone alive, and I shit you not, that kept me up for a night. Fucking giant bunny rabbit scared me,
Okay, you might be a
and at
bit. You
that
might be
point
a
I
bit
was
off kilter. I mean,
I
what
was too
really fucked
emo.
me. Oh, I didn't. It actually was the Scooby Doo movie though. It was those. It was the first one. Those fucking those monsters. Those incredibly realistic CGI monsters. Um, scared the piss out of me. I
They were
genuinely
pretty grim.
yeah, but they're also like
Yeah,
they're not. Like you can watch that as an
you're not meant to be
adult
like
and like your
genuinely
eyes could
scared.
glaze over. You could literally just watch it without even
Yeah,
thinking like a second thought. And as a child, it was like, this is terrifying. I need to leave.
the
I found Plants vs Zombies
the
scary.
yeah the tar monster in the second movie that got me pretty bad.
The Time Monster was also kind of
Like,
cool though, but only because no, that movie was. I
I
found
just
the
think
second one
it
less
was
scary for
just
some reason.
yeah, that's fair. I think because it didn't have a bunch of those evil fucking creatures and Scrappy Doo in it, but which actually I guess that same thing, but yeah, I don't know. I think surprisingly good. Is a simple matter of the fact of Scooby Doo live action movies.
Written by James
You know,
Gunn.
they got into the live action trend a lot earlier than the rest of the shit. Then got out
Oh,
just as quick.
that's you hear that, guys? That's the classic staple of Barrel Vision. Tyler macking on his controller buttons. You goon.
And that you are the only person who made that up.
What do you mean?
I mean, so the 100th episode. This is going to be a little bit more retrospective.
We're definitely not going to be tied down by the present moment.
Uh, I'm trying to think of other active words.
Introspective, retrospective, retroflective, reflective.
Retroflective sounds good.
Forward thinking.
That does not end in
future perspective. There must be other perspectives. I agree, but I can't think of them right now. What I can think of is the fact that I said we would probably head it up with a channel update, but then obviously the final point is we haven't actually really confirmed what the update is.
Yeah,
we know a kind of the major component. The major component is the fact that this is the 100th episode, and as a result, not as a result of it being the 100th, but it's also like, well, the podcast is absolutely going on ice for some amount of time.
We want the 101st episode to be our experience playing roll call.
Well. Now this is the kind of thing we needed to talk about. I mostly agree. I just do still think I need to raise the other option that I think has some weight to it. So we might as well just dive straight in, so it's out of the way. What Tyler said is very close to the truth, and it's probably more likely to be. It's more likely. But yeah, I'll cut to the point actually. So the closed alphas or the playtests don't go forever. They don't go forever at all. In fact, there will be like I think the idea is for them to have like the third quarter of the year mostly like untested, so they've tested it and got all the feedback and stuff like that. But now I'm thinking it doesn't give a super clear time frame. But for me, the only other option was because it definitely didn't feel good to be doing the podcast, especially during a time like this, where it's like, oh, it's supposed to be about like what's going on and also certainly what's upcoming. Mainly because what's going on are these playtests that we're not allowed in. Not that we're not allowed into, but we can't really. Well, yeah, not allowed into is valid, but also we can't really play either way.
Yeah, even if we were let in, it would be a real pain in the ass to maybe like actually play it.
Yeah,
but so
it wouldn't be invalid to still have something like this on the go when we're in the more public hype season of Rocore, which would sort of start after they've completely wrapped up. But I would think that would only really make, when I think about it, that really only makes sense if we were still going to keep doing it, and then it would start to feel better around that time. It's like we for some reason we've put up with doing the podcast through the playtests, and now they're over, we feel a little bit stupid. That would have made that make a bit more sense. But basically, what I'm saying is, what Tyler, like I said, or like I already said, what Tyler said is very much so more likely. But I don't want to put a 100% kind of damper on it. So basically, we will probably in private decide again. I would say once the playtests are fully concluded, we'll basically just like I'll bring it up again. I'm not. I can imagine that we might both fall on the same side, but I'll still bring it up again. There's a chance that it might make sense. It's like, oh, well, now it's like the marketing has started and it's these very more public things. But maybe the podcast
But
is
what would we
gone until
even?
roll call.
What would the
Shut
podcast
up,
even
cat!
be then about?
Well, it was
But
always
like,
because it
what
was always about
would then be
upcoming
like?
things and like
Oh, the
sort of
marketing. Like,
yeah. But at
yeah,
points, it was
sure, but
always
like
about that.
that was because that was all we ever had. Like, can you imagine that we were talking about Deep Rock without actually having played Deep Rock? That's how worthless of a contribution to the scene that is.
Yeah,
Um,
and the thing is, we've already
and that
done like unfortunately we've already done a lot of that for roll call when we really shouldn't have done. Over like the last, honestly, pretty much since season 5 has come out. Arguably, we've kind of been in the dark in a way that didn't really make sense to keep doing a podcast on. So yeah, I think we will
but
still.
once again, it's at least we were as in the dark as everyone else was, speculating as much as everyone else was, like looking excited as everyone else was. But we are now actually further back than everyone else is at the very least. Like, not everyone, I guess, but like there are people who can truly speak to the experience of playing the game, and it just we don't hold a candle to that.
Yeah, no. So I think we will talk about it again, but I think it's fair to say for now the current position is that actually, podcast is going away for some time, and we'll come back when, because the thing is, I've already had a couple episodes now that because obviously at the end of the title, it's like the brackets, and it's kind of something I've always done just to basically label the videos, right? So at the end of the title of the video, it's always the brackets, and it says Deep Rock Galactic. The other version is DRG : Rogue Core to be for when the video is entirely about Rogue Core. We've had a couple episodes of podcasts that have that in the brackets at the end, right? And I almost wish that we hadn't, because I think what we're looking at now is having the podcast go away because it cannot be it basically because it can't be focused at the moment. There's nothing for it to focus on at the moment. So by having it go away, it can come back to be a road court podcast basically, instead of a one that's not really about much of anything at the moment basically. And it will still be about Deep Rock because somehow Deep Rock does still have a future, but we're going to kind of come back on the other side. Whereas this has still kind of been this has still been the Battle Vision podcast that started as a Deep Rock podcast. So it needs to go away so it can come back and start again as a Road Court podcast, even if the other game will still be factored in. But basically, we're like Doomsday prepping, but like the opposite, like Bloomsday prepping. We're prepping for the dawn of a new age. So we're going to hibernate until
dawn of things to actually be able to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to hibernate basically, in a way. But in terms of like the logistics of the channel, I will immediately say, technically, a majority of the videos will still be going on, because that's just the fact of how the channel works. That just the Overclock showcases by themselves technically equate to more content because the fact that we started also, like occasionally in like a 3-week cycle, knocking one of those weeks off of our schedule. So the Overclock showcase has been weekly already equated to more content, and of course news videos as well. As in, those two things are going to continue until the end of time, basically. As in,
until you run out of overclocks.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about that, and it's like I do actually have a contingency plan, or not a contingency plan, just a plan for afterwards. But it's like the plan was to actually move on to something else that can fill that slot, basically. And it's like, what's the next best thing? And it's like, it's actually tier 5 upgrades, right? But the thing about that is, I don't think that would be too niche, like 2 years ago. If you know what I mean? Because it is niche, but it's also tier 5 upgrades are essentially overclocks. And And I think for me especially, I know that would work actually, because it would basically be an excuse for me to the videos. If the videos are about an upgrade, I have complete freedom over the overclocks finally, which I haven't had for years up to that point. But I'm just thinking about the time frame in that will be situated in. Like by the time I finish with the overclock showcase, and I would be far more interested in looking for a replacement for the series that's not in deep rock. Basically, I'd rather, when I'm done with overclock showcase, be able to move on to something that is based on rogue core instead, ideally. um,
Yeah, the problem is that really doesn't like translate
we
well.
don't know. Yeah, we don't know how that will work out at all.
Because with the build showcase, it is literally you can make this build yourself and then go into the cave and this is what will happen, and you're kind of like you're showing them what they can do. With roll core, you can't build. You can't choose to make a build, can you? Like you will basically it'll be more of just a run playthrough than it will be a build showcase. Sure, you could twist it to like what if you always only pick health upgrades, kind of thing. Will be different. It
Mm-hmm.
will have to be different.
Yeah,
But yeah,
but the point is
it's up to you.
the stuff that I'm doing basically, literally all the stuff that I'm doing where it's just me is not changing at all. Um,
Yeah,
and so, but the other part is um because we decided to for some reason do this on air, is if we are going to be stopping more than just the podcast, because obviously we'd already introduced a thing where in a 3 week cycle we can knock out one of those weeks, um and so getting rid of the podcast as well, if we didn't get rid of the other thing, that would leave us with one video every 3 weeks. And while I do think that's doable, I am already of the mind of not, at least not tying us down, basically, um, to that kind of thing.
I
As
think
in, I think there could be videos, is what I'm saying, but they would be more
yeah,
contingent. Like something like a trailer
it's
breakdown, for example. That would still, I think we would still do that, but I
sure.
don't think we should have a schedule. Is kind of the idea.
It's more like currently talking about Deep Rock is almost pointless because they're not working on it. And
Yeah.
currently talking about Rogue Core is almost pointless because there's nothing we can say that someone else can't say from a better like platform. Um, and so it's kind of like, all right, so I don't really want to talk about Deep Rock or Rogue Core. And then it's kind of like, what's the point of talking about anything really at that point? At that point, like, so it comes down to like either some like like I don't know, tier list kind of shit, right? Like
Well,
that would
that's
be like
why I have to
the only real thing to.
that's why I have to get candid about like literally what videos there are to make. In that there are actually, for me, only 2 to 3 left, basically from basically like the season 5 sort of like refresh, basically that puts on all the videos. Um, and
Yeah,
one of those is an enemy tier list, which is actually very valid. The only reason something like that didn't feel too valid is because we did one. I think the one before that was fairly recent. Um, it would have been like after season 4, so not a huge gap.
yeah,
But from now, it's a bit of a gap. And of course, season 5 actually did have 4 enemies. And my idea might have been to also take a different approach, because when we did the enemy tier list, we did the thing that we often do with these kind of things, which is just like, let's not pick an approach. Let's just try and figure out what we think makes these things best, like designed in the game. As in something like enemies, you could do that in a lot of different ways. Though you could do that like by like how annoying they are, for example, which we did that as well. I'm pretty sure I remember doing that.
yeah. We did, yeah,
But I think we also did it in terms of general design. So we've actually have done 2 of those already. But what I'm saying is just from the season 5 refresh, that was one of them. And the other one that I have wanted to do for a while, which was a bit more expansive, was also an armor, like just an armor set tier list, which was kind of like an expansion of the DLC one, but it's like obviously more specific. And it actually got refreshed as well, technically, recently, by adding a new DLC. And the third video, which was more contingent on whether or not it made sense, was something to do with the old wiki. And I don't know if you're aware of this, because there's two Deep Rock wikis. One of them is fandom, and the other one is not. And that fandom
Yeah.
is a terrible like platform. Um, and so the old wiki, as in it's the old wiki, it's not updated anymore. It's actually filled with basically joke articles now. Um, and so a lot of stuff has like fake information in it or bullshit information. At the same time, I think some of it's been cleaned up. So I really wanted to do something where we like look at the bullshit that is contained in that wiki. But I think it's been cleaned up a bit for some reason, even though it's got no reason to be. Because no one uses that wiki anymore. But I still thought it was funny. And it would have been a great April Fool's video actually, I suppose. But I can hear
Yeah,
my
going
cat
through the
right
Deep Rock
outside
wiki.
door. Yeah, but like it's filled with bullshit. It's
Yeah.
like fan fiction basically. Um, but yeah, I think it's fair to focus more on those two tier lists because we could either basically we that's in we could do them and I would be happy to. It's my initial thoughts. There's only two more videos to do, probably over the course of the next month or month and a half. And that basically means that everything is kind of like done, you know. At the same time, we're doing this podcast right now, which very much so feels like a sort of endpoint. So it's like, do we just put those on ice for? Because those are things, by the way, especially like the enemy tier list, for example. As weird and sort of distant and uncertain DRG's own future is, we kind of know that's still something that we'll get, more of in a way. So it's like, is there actually any need to actually do this right now? And right now there definitely isn't, which is why it probably would be better to do it like more soon after season 5 came out, right? But I don't know if the right now there's really a need. So it's like, do we get these last sort of two tier lists out the way, or do we actually treat this as the end point? This podcast as the end point for that kind of deep rock content for now, basically. I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, it's literally just two videos.
Yeah, I feel like, that there's no need to do it now, combined with the fact that it would really kind of be breaking up the silence with just that one or two things, and that's like
Yeah, yeah,
it would be odd. But it's something like, we're our own bosses. We can do whatever the fuck we want, whenever the fuck we want. Like, so if we do feel possessed to do something or talk about something, I'm sure we will.
yeah. I think
It's just that, like,
Double
right
Barrel
now,
could come
within the
back.
parameters that we're our own boss, I feel like I'm just kind of forcing it. Like, it's not really anything to talk about most of the time, and we're just turning up, not saying much, leaving. you know, I just I don't know.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
I think it's probably fair to say in general to don't not inherently expect anything, but it would be also weird, I think from our perspective, for there to have been nothing between now and episode 101. I'm sure there will be some things scattered throughout, maybe even things in sort of the double barrel vein, um, like Doctor Who, which actually has some precedent. And basically, I didn't want to be too official about that. Obviously, I'm saying it now, but like obviously, there's a new Doctor Who series going on. What I would actually do, just to make it easy on us, is literally probably just record, not even go on Discord, just start record us talking on the Monday, like the following Monday, um, and just put
maybe.
out our discussion. As in, there could be more videos like that that are much more off the cuff and in the double barrel sense, and there could also be potentially more streams, in a sort of random sense, but at the same time, um, that is not a that shouldn't be taken as any kind of. I'm not going to give you any kind of frequency or actual promise of regularity on that. It's just like there are obviously things that could happen. We're not like literally we're not going on a forced lockdown basically. Not going.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not lockdown like with COVID, anything like that.
I think it is just like on the most technical specific front, like we don't like we're gonna pause the podcast and we don't see much need to do many of the other things we normally do.
Yeah, which is
On
suffice to
Saturdays.
say. I
Yeah.
think suffice to say as well, just going forward, while there will very likely end up being a main video every week for a while after Road Court comes out, I think we should sort of take the schedule with a bit more sort of control and like. Well, actually, not even necessarily control. Look, almost the opposite. More freedom in the case of like being our own bosses. It's just like this is still the day for videos. But I think aside from the podcast, videos will be when they are basically needed, I guess, literally. And that's why there'll probably be a lot after Rogal comes out, but they still might not be every intervening week. And we might need time to sort of gather thoughts on a topic, if it's like for a tier list, for example. And so the podcast will resume with this frequency, which will be one every 3 weeks. I think that actually really works for Ghost Ship's cadence because it actually gives them time to sort of build up activity. But the intervening weeks will just be populated by what feels relevant, and that might not be anything at times. But yeah, it's like there's like it's like the days like we hold a certain sacredness to the day of Saturday, and that's not going to change for like I don't think. But it's also like how frequent things are. It's not going to be we're not going to, I don't think we're going to tie ourselves down except for the podcast. But that's why it needs to go away. We've been doing the podcast with still with a fixed frequency for a while, and it's like we either need to
the frequency has been progressively getting lower and lower over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Like, but
and obviously that's going to be part of this episode, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's only really been meeting with the amount of things to talk about. You know that we've gathered, because back when we started, which if we start going there, season 3, 2, season 2, wasn't it?
Well, if we're going to the origin, if we're going to do that part of it, which I think we should. I think we've gotten the most surefire decisions on the table, which is like podcast is going away for a while, and so is everything else, but we're also not going to force ourselves to stop either. That's the general consensus. But yeah, the origin of Powervision. Well, we started on literally. It was literally the 1st of January, wasn't it? Right? So it's the 1st of January, 2022.
I already had the account, which is why I think it says it starts like a while ago. But New Year's resolution between me and Tom, which he appears on the channel every now and then, his was, I think, to learn Japanese, which he was doing for a while but stopped. And mine was to post at least one video on YouTube every week. And that week was literally Sunday. Like it was the year started on a Sunday the 1st, so it was like, well, this is the end of the week, which means I technically we should do one. I have to do one today.
Yeah, and it was anyone kind of like, who like knows what that first video was probably understands a certain obsession that has been prevalent throughout the channel. Because that was it. Well, I think it was by chance that we happened to do that video, but I do think it embedded that feature in our heads more than it probably should have been, because it was
it defined everything.
It did,
like, because ultimately it was like, all right, we've got to make a video, and then it was like, what do I want to do? I know I don't want to sit in like a room, talk to myself, and like edit a video. I know I don't want to do that. Don't really have the time for that. Don't really have the knowledge. Don't really have the passion, to be honest with you. And so it was like, all right, what do we do? And then and then it was like, I think obviously we must have been like in a party talking, right? Which, for a Sunday, that's surprising.
Now,
or we recorded it early for the Saturday. I'm not sure. Could have been. Either way, Um, yeah, we like what we're gonna record, and then I guess a tier lists were a thing, right? And they always are still. But I think that was like prime tier this time. Um, and yeah, we
Yeah,
just
I
found
don't
a
remember
deep rock
exactly how we came to it, but I
tier
think
list.
yeah, I think it was probably that's probably how it must have happened. You must have just searched up Deep Rock Galactic on Tier Maker, and
Yeah,
it might have been the first one that came up, or it might have just been the first one that caught your eye. Either way, I guess that's how that came to
it
be.
was something. It was something that we liked, which that was it. Like we liked talking about deep rock. It was like one of the few things that I think we could do for hours on end, and we did as well, right? Because that was the thing. We were talking about deep rock, you, me, and Tom, like for like hours. Like every time we were playing or even not playing it, we were talking about it. And it was kind of like, is this not the perfect thing to record? Like the thing that we are already doing? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't
hey,
even remember it being a decision because I guess it was more so your decision, but I don't even remember it being a prominent decision that your YouTube channel would be about deep rock. Um, I just remember
yeah, I
you
think it
like
was
I just
literally
remember being called in basically to do a perk tier, like a passive perk tier list. Because that was the first. Actually, was it passive? I think we started with passive because it's sort of
thing.
like that's like sort of
More
hierarchical, right? If you know what I mean.
with them in passive, yeah.
Because if literally looking at it, you do
Yeah.
start with passives. So I think that is correct. It's like okay, yeah, I think we can do that. Um, and we did it, and I want to find it right now because I know that it wasn't quick, but that video got quite a lot of views actually.
Got like 300 views within like a couple days, which this is probably was one of the best ideas we had early on was posting the video to the Reddit.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. Even though that's
it
actually
just
that completely goes against Reddit's terms of service, by the way. Um,
yeah. Well, I'm not
I
surprised.
don't know if you knew that explicitly. I actually didn't until recently. I only stopped posting them to the Reddit after I got threatened with a ban. Um, but yeah, I literally,
Which
which I don't.
maybe in hindsight we were posting it for too long after the fact. Um,
Well,
but
the point is, you're literally
you know
not supposed to do self promotion on Reddit. Which, by the way, that's
that's bullshit.
Reddit's well, it is, but it's still Reddit's like right to have their own rules, whatever they want. But at the same time, I think social media, you're kind of supposed to be able to share. As far as I was concerned, we were just sharing something that we had made. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it is objectively self promotion, and that was at least half the motive. But it was also like, look at this tier list, and we wanted people to see
It's
it
like
and to talk about
we
it.
know how YouTube works enough just by being, young. We know that YouTube is not something where you just kind of post to it and expect anything to happen, right? It's one of those things where it's like you will talk into the void until suddenly you don't. And posting it to the Reddit just meant we didn't immediately. Which did, fucking wonders
Yeah, I think it was
to
actually
like
important. Even
confidence.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was important for and how we got a foothold at all. Um,
Yeah.
I guess at the time it was just the channel's name though was just you.
It was just Curse Cats,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a terrible,
Um,
terrible name.
'Cause that's what it.
Um,
Well, that's just what it was. Because as mentioned, it was my channel beforehand, and then I
which
think
I think that might be one of the most surprising elements that we're not really highlighting enough for a lot of people. This channel is Tyler's actually. It is. It's his account. And
yeah.
I think that probably
Uh,
might come as a surprise to
oh, dude,
just about everyone who's watching this. Just about everyone.
even back then, so we probably like maybe a month into filming videos, we kind of I was feeling less into it already, I think, and Harry more so, and it was kind of like we switched. Then added it was like Curse Cats and Barrel. I think you
It
still
was. I
you
was.
just like switched to that, yeah. And
I
it
was
was
at
like
that
kind of
point.
like I remember it was like probably just before like there was a light reboot. I wouldn't even call it that. There was a small break, I think, before the first episode of the
Well,
podcast.
yeah, I remember
At
you
that point,
trying
I
to
know.
get us to. You were trying to get us to do stuff that didn't really clearly wasn't the right. approach at all. You were trying to manufacture like a video essay channel, and I don't know what the approach was at this point. It's so
I
long
don't even remember
ago.
that.
And it was like it would still have been me talking, which is like, so who was writing them? I don't even
Oh
remember what the dynamic was supposed to
yeah,
be. You tried to get us to make a video, like a video
you
essay
were
about
right.
machine events. I remember this, and I was like, I don't think this is what we want to do. I don't even remember really saying
Yeah,
that,
I remember
but
doing that. I remember gathering clips of machine events, and I probably still have them on my old PC. Like,
yeah.
oh, dude,
Well,
it's still
this
my
this is
PC,
why
but
it's
that's why.
important to note that
But yeah,
we didn't start the channel at any real notable point in Deep Rock's lifetime, really. Um, it obviously we got to that point where our conversations were always like every moment is like pivotal or something like that. That was a common through line, but the time was
yeah,
basically between season 1 and 2, which, relatively speaking, wasn't that important. If we had started, say, just before season 1, that would have been an interesting time to start. But we were like in a very weird spot where the most notable thing about when we started is that it was arguably the start of Deep Rock, um, sort of not downtrending per se, but becoming more uncertain. In that we kind of started at the worst time to do a podcast on it, because they started to clamp up more than ever as
yeah, yeah,
seasons went on, until after season 4, basically. Um, that's when they started to realize what they were doing. Um, so it definitely was a weird time to start, but I think it was probably started by the fact, because you can trace a lot of this back even longer if you wanted to, because the idea of doing a podcast, I mean, it's every man's dream, right? Um,
Mm.
and it had been floating around in our little circle for far too long. It's
Oh
like,
yeah,
because you were this little freak who wanted to plague our lunchtimes with planning our futures, um,
yeah.
and I hated it. I hated it because I feel like, unlike so many other people, um, I am so easily content, and I'm just like, I don't need to think about how I'm gonna like make a living at all. I'm just gonna, I don't know, I'm just gonna keep going for education, and I'll be all right. And it's like, we need to figure out how we're gonna make money. We're all gonna live together, and we're gonna live forever. And it's like, oh fucking hell,
I like
Tyler.
how I sound like a fucking dwarf when I was like 15.
Yeah.
I
Um,
like that.
but I could never deny that the podcast idea was always tantalizing. But it was
Yeah, it's the
always,
only one that would actually stick.
it was the only one that anyone
But
took any interest in, and that's
yeah,
because, well, I don't know why, apart from like men like podcasts, but um, then there were plenty of discussions about, well, what the hell would we do a podcast on, and I mean, I guess at the time, a general discussion podcast would have worked fine, but at the same time wouldn't have done, because it would have been terrible, because it would have been a bunch of
I know like
children. Um,
Prop podcast did like come up because I remember we were sitting at like science and like the Drop Pod podcast or Drop podcast,
yeah,
like
which we didn't realize
that
that existed.
title. Yeah, we didn't. And like yeah, that like rang through our ears like, oh, that's good. I like the sound of that. And yeah, and eventually, I guess everything combined, I uh,
Well, I think us
just
seeing the
as the
opportunity to
channel
do a
turned into
podcast.
Barren Barrel as
Well,
well, like I even got
I
rid of
think,
my name. I
okay.
was pulling out
Yeah,
like
actually, no, it must have done, because yeah, no, I know, I do know that it went, it became Baron Barrel, just Baron Barrel for a little bit. But the podcast idea came up when it did, because it was basically prompted really by Ghost Ship, because it was literally the first teaser for season 2. And I remember what it was. Um it was the very first teaser for the Nemesis, actually. I think it even showed a little bit of the Com Router event, which we assumed was tied to it, but the main point of the clip that sort of was like that got everyone talking was the sound of like the sort of slightly slightly roboticized, because it is meant to be a good mimic, but a slightly roboticized dwarven voice calling out
Yeah.
somewhere in the darkness, just like, and that was really the first time we'd really. I think it really was the first time they'd done a teaser like that, even though it wasn't, by the way. But it was since the channel started, and it was like, okay, I guess some, because I'm not gonna we're not gonna remember the real specifics, but I guess that kind of flipped some kind of switch. It's like, we can talk about this and we can speculate about this, and that could be something. And I guess we landed on the conclusion that that could be the podcast, and so it was. It was literally the first episode of the podcast. I remember it was Robo Dwarfs. I put like a dwarven centurion from Skyrim in the thumbnail, which was which worked.
I'm
I
sure that
think.
very well conveyed that we're talking about Deep Rock Galactic.
I don't know if it was or not. Probably
Yeah.
not. But what still surprised me, obviously, because the channel was called Baron Barrel at the time, but the fact that I immediately called it the Barrel Vision Podcast.
Literally, I
So
think we just started it, and we were like, and you were like, welcome to the. Oh no, yeah, I know exactly. You started it by Barrel Vision, Barrel Vision. That's literally just how you started it.
yeah, the
I'm
long
pretty sure.
forgotten theme tune
Um,
because of copyright infringement issues.
yeah, not really, but also yeah.
Barrel Vision, Barrel Vision. Yeah, well, but it's just weird that I kind of just came up with that, and so as much as the channel has been through various iterations, and the podcast has in some ways, like certainly like thumbnails and the actual like presentation, but it has actually at very least always been the Battle Vision podcast. And I think when you think about it as like a history, if I wasn't, if I wasn't in it, I would find it surprising that it was called that before the channel was called that, because it sounds like the name that you would give to a podcast based on the channel name, if you know what I mean. It's like,
Yeah.
the channel was like already called Barrel Vision, and then it makes sense if you start a podcast, a name that you could default to, if you needed to, was the Barrel Vision podcast. Which is why I like that our channel name actually came from an off the cuff original name for the podcast. Still based on the channel name of Baron Barrel, in a way. That was the idea.
Yeah.
But it was still like,
We like
we
barrels.
can use that, and it was like, and then I knew, and I don't regret it, even if it became more skewed towards me as far as the workload went. I don't. I think the principle made perfect sense. Was like, I didn't want it. I didn't really want the channel named after me in that way. It still is in a way, isn't it? Because it's Barrel Vision, and my moniker is Baron Barrel. So it is named after me, but it's also not named after. It's not one person either. That was the point. I was like, well, we've got this podcast name, so we could just call the channel that, because it means it's not like entirely hinging on me anymore, like in like name. Even though it did, and kind of does in a lot of ways. And well, I guess the podcast just went from there basically, and went with the tide. And that was kind of it for a while, to be honest. It wasn't that like that. There wasn't that much that went on from when we started, in terms of the podcast. But there was obviously a bunch of other videos, and it's like, when do we do them, and what are they, and what not? And then like weird stuff started, like the overclock workshop, which was definitely a sort of strong period, I think. Creatively, at least.
I really enjoyed making them. Maybe not inherently talking about them after the fact, but definitely making them. And yeah, I think that's probably our golden age. And then I think soon after, I think the dark age hit.
Yeah.
Am I wrong in that remembering that
You're definitely not
the gap
wrong.
between season 2, it's going into season 3, put us in a fucking dark place.
It was probably I would say it's like the moment that we were, us doing the podcast coincided with feeling like basically the moment that doing the podcast coincided with basically having any kind of non-positive feelings towards Deep Rock. Um,
Yeah.
I think it probably had an unfair effect on our discussions, to be honest. Um, as in, I don't think a shred of the sort of negativity that we kind of dwelled in as far as the podcast goes had any positive effect. I think sort of the direction that Ghost Ship has
No.
gone is entirely isolated and would have happened regardless, which kind of makes all the times
But
that we had conversations that were very negative, like kind of pointless. Really?
at the same time, we predicted the downtrend of the game and its content, and we do know that Ghost Ship listens and did listen. Like, so at the same time, it's hard to say we had no effect when we were right and we know that they heard us. Which, yeah, I don't think they turn healed because of us. But I do also think that, like, we were complaining about the way the game was heading before, like, people noticed, right? But we also do know that, there were devs in our chats every now and then back then, right? Like, I think maybe like slightly after is when we actually saw them and like talked to them, and we felt like a bit bad about how mad we got. But like, yeah, we did predict the downtrend, right? Everyone loved season 3 within the parameters of season 3, but then season 4 kicked in, and all of the problems we complained about previously reared their head, right? Like, and
Well,
it
I,
was
I
kind of
remember
like,
actually. I remember we were actually uncharacteristically optimistic just before season 4 um because we had been so weirdly down on season 3 already,
yeah,
that for some reason season 4 didn't
we got it
inherently
out of
come
our system.
across as a downgrade, even though it was, because all in all I still think there is some stuff to be said about timing, and that season 3 didn't justify like season 3 still doesn't really justify lengthening the wait in the way it did. Season 4
Yeah,
did for a completely different reason. Season 3 didn't, but season 3 was still actually a perfectly like actually fair update. Um, I mean, I think we were still right in that one grenade per class was a little bit underbaked in a way, as like, oh, we're adding new grenades, but it's one per class. But obviously, I think we also came to the conclusion later on that it wouldn't have changed like too much about the perspective on season 3. But it was still an entirely fair update. It added new grenades, which still adds like do mix things up quite a bit, and it added like this very interesting sort of new enemies. And the thing is that that's kind of it though. Actually, it didn't add that much, but season 4 was still a problem child, and there was like a lot of uncertainty there, and I still feel really bad um about well, I feel bad about a lot of it actually, but we weren't like I guess you could say we didn't inherently forgive them when Rotor was announced, because that was such a weird time, because it took time to digest the fact that Rotor was to blame for season 4 basically. And even when you digest that, it still doesn't mean it's like it's good that that happened, if you know what I mean. It's like um it made them trip up internally, I guess, like trying to make a season but also trying to design a like expansion. Um and you understand now what the consequences were of that, and season 4 went that way because it did, but it doesn't change season 4 being like a bad update, you know. um
yeah.
so
It doesn't change the fact that still, ultimately, they were the ones that made those decisions. It's just they probably weren't aware of how the consequences were, like bad, how bad they
yeah,
were.
so
And
even though we started to understand, it still didn't change that even going into Rokor's announcement didn't inherently save Ghost Ship from the perspective that we had on them during that time,
yeah,
unfortunately. And in some ways, it wouldn't even change for longer because obviously then like Rogue Core, and this is actually going into last year, actually, because when Rogue Core got delayed, we thought it was really cool that they were doing these like smaller updates for Deep Rock, right?
Yeah.
In between 4 and 5.
Pretty impactful, all things
Yeah,
considering.
but they were pretty impactful because they actually weren't small updates. Even though they came across as small
Yeah.
updates, they still somehow consumed the entire team, and frankly are the reason why Rogue Core got delayed. um,
Yeah.
and
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 within
at the same
that,
time,
it
they
once
basically
again,
saved us in a way. Like the idea of these smaller updates was so like refreshing, and like, oh well, that's gonna really bridge the gap in a way that we haven't had even before Rogue Core's announced. Like we'd had these long gaps, and now like getting smaller updates sounds like such a nice idea. And without realizing that, it would have been better for everyone if they had either not done them and just worked on Rogue Core, or gone straight towards season 5, and then shifted to Rogue Core after that, even earlier. Um,
yeah.
we didn't realize that. We didn't realize we actually didn't want the maintenance updates, you know, especially when season 5 invalidates like the major feature of the November one, which was the season toggle. Season 5 just
Yeah.
adds season selection, which completely evaporated it. As in, it did. That's not a thing anymore. The toggle, because you can just switch to unseasoned because you can just.
Yeah. But it's still like, it was the beginning of this feature, but it just, it was a real rough time for them, and I wouldn't even say it's a rough time for us, but it was difficult to watch a company we had so much faith in kind of like fluster around, right, clueless in the dark, like swinging and missing and for, and it was kind of,
Yeah,
it was rough.
and there were
We were actually still
they
generally more,
were swinging and missing. I think pretty undeniably. And
because they didn't really know, they'd stopped talking, right? As we talked about, they didn't know what people wanted, and people didn't know what they were doing, and it was just kind of not great. And I don't inherently think they definitely improved, but Rogue Core as a decision still screams what, like, them in the dark, what they came up with rather than players, because it was a DLC that spiraled into its own game where I don't think anyone was asking for a DLC, right?
yeah, yeah,
Right. So it's like, and ultimately, I do think, them developing Rogue Core, they've been very open about it, very classic Deep Rock and all that stuff. But still, all the people that just wanted more Deep Rock stuff, they're working on it for like 2 years, right? And it's like I don't know, they were just so heads down back then, and they're kind of, they're just working with their choices now, for better or for worse,
yeah.
whether or not you believe in Rogue Core or not. But
Well, it when it comes to Rogue Core, and especially the relationship that it all has to the channel, is basically I think we've taken too long. Like this is much more recent. This is more so the present, actually. We've taken too long to accept that they're basically um what's the thing that caterpillars do?
cocooning,
Well, kind of. Well, yeah. But I think there is a word for it more like that describes like the whole process.
painting.
Metamorphosis, I guess, of some kind.
Yeah.
Um, in that they're kind of it took too long to realize they were basically rebirthing themselves, which sounds a little bit weird,
Yeah.
but they are, and it's like
Which, there was the
it,
literal one by they moved into a new office kind of
yeah,
like approach, right?
and but the problem what if that had like multiple effects on the channel, and one of the biggest ones was even though that's happening, it's taking a long time, and it didn't change the fact that Deep Rock, if Ghost Ship were going to be reborn, it's still leaving Deep Rock in the dust somewhat. Um, but the point is, it took us too long to realize that what Rogue Core actually is an opportunity for basically both of us, as in both us and Ghost Ship. The opportunity for Ghost Ship is to make a new game with all their experience. The opportunity for us is to basically be there from day one with the channel, for a game that they're making. and to actually be in a better position to do so. Because you trust me, I don't think we would have gone very far if we had started a Deep Rock podcast in 2018. I don't think, but we're
Yeah.
basically now on the cusp of it being like a completely new starting point, basically for both. Um, and I don't really feel bad that we don't get to partake in what is technically the actual starting point, which is the alpha, because it's not. It's not a public starting point. Um, the
Yeah.
launch is where it's going to be focused on, and that's why a break makes perfect sense, because it's like we're literally cocooning in the same way that Ghost Ship are, as far as the podcast goes. Um, and it can be reborn so that we can basically have these regular discussions alongside a game that is literally only going to be just starting this year, really, with such a
Yeah.
a long road ahead of it, you know. Um,
Hopefully.
very hopefully, yeah. But I have very little doubt either. Um,
Well, once again, it's like the problem, which I still feel like they haven't actually thought about, of in what universe is, as soon as you release Rogue Core, going back to working on Deep Rock a good idea,
yeah,
right? Like, we
yeah,
haven't looked at the numbers in a while now, but I can only imagine Deep Rock's numbers are probably not much better than
yeah.
Rogue
And
Core
by the
is,
way,
considering the amount of players
this
that
is
can get on it.
okay because
Like,
I think this is the kind of thing that we had. We was for some reason we'd still been talking about these kind of topics for the last few months when we shouldn't have been. But given that this is the last one for a while, it makes sense to touch base on basically everything, and that
yeah,
includes the future of Deep Rock, as in it's a thing, right? But they do kind of need to. They put out a roadmap for Rogue Core, which is kind of more internal anyway. It's more like, here's how we're going to be taking feedback and working on that over the next month up until like Q4, when we're going to try and get the game out.
yeah.
But what they also need is another one of the actual roadmaps. Or sorry, what I should say is Ghost Ship Publishing roadmaps, because um, Mike has talked about, and by the way, what a champion, first of all, Mike.
Getting that out of the way.
Just getting on the streams and just not shying away from like anything. In fact, what I really liked is that very often it was Mike himself picking out the questions, and reading them out to himself. It wasn't even like the
Yeah.
other guys, which I think actually makes it a little bit less filtered, because he's not a PR guy, and
Well,
neither is
yeah.
Mickle.
Also, it's
But
just like it's just any question that he knows he can answer. Otherwise, it's like they
that's also
guess
true.
and they're like,
And
"Hey, can you answer this?" And he's like, "No."
it also means he's not going to pick
Like,
anything that he can't answer. But it's like he'll
yeah,
very very happily answer people who are asking about the future of Deep Rock Galactic itself. And the currently publicly available information is that season 6 will be planned and then I guess therefore developed after Rogue Core has gone into early access. So what that implies is that season 6 would be a first half of 2026 ordeal, right? It will sort of be probably out by this time or maybe next month, next year. Um, but and that would be I think that would be the case, assuming that they are doing season 6. But that doesn't sound great, because as amazing as season 5 is, we know they put a lot of time and effort into it, which is a good thing for season 5, and would be a good thing for season 6, but wouldn't be a good thing for Rogue Core now that Rogue Core's just come out. But what Mike said very specifically was that it kind of shouldn't really say season 6 on there. It shouldn't really say anything. All it should really say is, we'll plan what we're going to do with Deep Rock after Rogue Core's come out.
ooh,
That doesn't even mean they'll jump straight into making something for it, really.
they're just actually gonna think about Deep Rock once
Yeah,
they've got this
and he said
ready.
that might not be season 6. We don't really know yet. And I think it makes sense for it to be that up in the air. I don't want Rogue Core to be that up in the air. I hope that they have take some time to planning for that. Actually, we do know they want Rocal to be quite polished on launch, though, and it already looks that way. It looks far more polished than Deep Rock was already.
Yeah.
But I do hope they have a plan there. But I understand still being in a weird spot with Deep Rock because the entire nature of what they've done, like at every turn, the consequence has been leaving Deep Rock in a weird spot. So I'm not that surprised. I just hope when they do come to their decision, it makes sense and it's future proofed either in the sense of they come up with something that is sustainable in sort of regular manner, or they finally decide to buckle down and make like the last update. At the same time, I think we've had this discussion where it wouldn't feel necessarily great to sandwich Deep Rock's final update in between Rocal just coming out and then starting its own like regular updates. You know, it's like Rocal's just come out. Now everyone focus on Deep Rock. It's like, and that includes us and them.
Yeah,
You know what I
well,
mean? Like the audience and the
because
developers.
let's try and like Beth
Best,
best face face best faith scenario.
best case is what you
I
want to
think
say. Best case,
yes,
or good
I
faith.
got quite
It could be one.
yeah, both combined. Um, is that Ghost Ship is now big enough and capable enough to where they can work on both at a reasonable pace, right? And I don't even mean long term. I just mean in this term, like Road Core still gets enough content in its early stages to where it's still like feels live servicey, update every like month or so, right? With a new significant feature, kind of early Deep Rock, and Deep Rock gets a quote season 6, whatever in way, shape, or form that contains within half a year, right? Like best case scenario where that like is the case, it does still feel like it's just not something you would want to do. Like, again, right? You release season 6, and it's like that team is still working on Rocal, that team is still working on Deep Rock for like another 6 months. And it just doesn't. I mean, 6 months is obviously generous with their track record, right? You're looking at a year or so. But it's right, I really do think that Deep Rock makes sense to get a final update, right? And not that the final update is even going to add like the most content. Like it's not going to add a new wave of guns, and it's not going to be the biggest update in the world. But just like put the game in as many finished places that they want it to be as possible. Like either they finally nut up and admit that they're never going to do that perk rework, or do that perk rework.
Do that and finally make Deep Rock the perfect game that it almost is.
Yeah, like because ultimately it's like with all these seasons, like there are probably added just as many imperfections and flawed features that needs more than they have perfected features in the game, right? Like for every I don't know, like I guess new overclocks, right? They added jetty boots. So I'm not saying jetty boots is bad, but I'm saying that its insinuation as for all the things that are similar to jetty boots that could be added, like this whole new feature you just added to the game, they're never really going to fill in that. They're never going to add more in-game item upgrade stuffs.
It was
You definitely could.
it was a
That could
really
have been a feature we had
frustrating
ages ago.
symptom of seasons where they could basically add features that weren't representative of a new part of the game. They were just very isolated, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
and J Boots is kind of the pinnacle of that in like a bad way, where it's like this. If this was added in like even it does, I'm not even saying it had to be pre 1.0. If this was added in something like one of like the bigger updates before seasons, even it could be like it would be propped up probably like a new like power up sort of thing. It's like we'll probably add more to these in the future. If anything, it would be more likely that that would have been like a focus of an update, and it'd be like they would have added more than one, even in the first go around. It's like here's Jetty Boots, here's I don't know what the other ones would be actually. We had ideas for sure, but I don't actually remember what they were.
It would just be
Wall
like
climbing,
in-game
I
buffs,
don't know.
essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and it's kind of just like it's the game is done. Ultimately, in like many features, it doesn't need these new like bubbles tacked onto it, right? Like as much as I do, we agree the seasons have provided quite a lot. It does feel like they've also kind of weirdly formed the shape of the game in like certain areas, like just these bubble sets of enemies, right? And obviously, over recent years, they've been amending it, right? They've been adding more enemies to the general pool,
Yeah, it's
and
not even.
that's felt pretty
It's
good.
kind of weird because it's not
Um,
something that ever truly stopped though either. At the same time, because season 5 still did that, and it's almost one of the weirdest cases because it's like it's the smallest but also um most relegated bubble. It's one enemy type and only appears during one event, which is the course one crawler. But
yeah,
so it still found its way all the way to the end, or the most recent season, but it's still been they've gone in the opposite direction still as well because season 5 also added three normal like generic enemies. Season 4 even added two. Say what you will. I know some people don't like them, but that's still one of the best things that season 4 did. um,
yeah.
the Stingtail and the
Even though,
Spreader.
yeah, they did really struggle with this thing ultimately.
They did.
Um,
They did. I mean, I think it's kind of strange. Out of all the enemies that they started adding when they did start doing that, I think the best one probably was the Vartok and the Scale Bramble, which is the one with
yeah,
the nodes that sort of spread out. But I guess they kind of got back on track in a way for Deep Rock. And but then it's like, but and now while that's good, there's still only so much you can do with a game that has this much technical debt. And that's where the idea
yeah.
of
And it's
rebirth
like,
comes in. It's like Rocore being unburdened is maybe the most exciting thing about it. Genuinely, it's like it's untethered basically to all the debt that they've accumulated
yeah.
with Deep Rock. Um,
And like with the new like features, you can add like with Deep Rock, like the Jetty boots are these new. They had if Jetty boots were to be added, they had to be this new like faction of equipment, right? This new feature. But meanwhile, in Rollcore, it could just be another movement ability, right? That Jetty boots can just be like next to the Durels in your menu and like shit like that. Like
Getty
they've
boots
just got
could
this
be
different.
an upgrade.
Oh yeah, like
Even
there's just this new like bountiful pools of ideas and contents in this new game.
yeah,
Meanwhile, Deep Rock, it's like they have to twist and break and change and the warnings, right? We're talking about, we like the lithophage warning, but also it just doesn't feel like a warning at all. It's so far beyond
that's
warning,
why
but it's just
I
something that the game doesn't
that's
have,
nothing
and
that's
they
so
just
amazing
like
about season 5 though, because season 5 really this is why I really hope if there is a season 6 it follows the same vein as season 5, because season 5 I think it was so much more fruitful because it was a result of them accepting the way Deep Rock was, and instead of
yeah,
trying to push
it
boundaries
really
it was like what new ideas fit within the framework that Deep Rock is, instead of us like spending
yeah,
time
I
trying
don't
to make a really high effort warning that breaks what a warning normally is. Let's just make
you
two
probably
like solid ideas into new warnings. It's just
You
that
probably know,
work.
like, remember more than I do, but like, did they actually add like any new kind of branch, or did they just strengthen and add to the branches already in the game?
So see, is this about
Because like,
season 5?
yeah,
Well,
because
season
there
5
was
was like
overclocks
season
and
5.
the
I think
warnings.
every part of season 5 embraces what I just talked about. Even when they did add a new system, it was one that worked, and that's Hazard
What
5
was it?
Plus. Um,
Ah,
it's like,
yeah,
but this is very
but that was
easy
just.
to
But
implement.
even then, though, dude, I would just say that's adding on to the difficulty branch, right? It's just heightening that, like I mean, I guess it's technically not because you can use it at any difficulty. Yeah, you're
Well, no,
right.
well you
But
can't.
yeah,
I don't know why.
it's still.
That was a weird sentence.
Oh, actually, yeah. No, why do I think you can?
I don't know. You can't.
Oh, I think I remember just people wanted it to be that.
Yeah,
And I've like
yeah,
history
and
has
and it
rewrote
and it
itself in my
shouldn't
head.
be. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
Which, by
But
the
yeah, no,
way,
it's just
I am
then
still
I'm right.
holding out on them adding. I don't think they will, but I am holding out on new Hazard 5 Plus features because that would be
Maybe.
in keeping with what they do or were doing with season 5 anyway. It's like adding new layers to the systems already
Dude,
in
the
place.
problem is
Elite
I
enemy
wouldn't,
frequency is my number one. It's my
I
number.
wouldn't say that they were just adding new layers. I would say they were putting the icing on top of layers. I think the modifiers of Hazard 5 Plus, and sure you can still add some, but that feature is a cherry on top of the
It
difficulty
is
setting.
putting
Right?
basically a wax seal on the letter
Yeah.
of difficulty. It's like this is our
So
final
there's never going to be a
message.
6. There's never going to be anything like that. If you want more difficulty, it's this, and it's modifiable to you for
Right,
what you want.
turn it
And
all
it's like
up.
stuff like that.
Take a random
And
visor. Go on double warning. Get
the
over
exact
it.
same thing with the fucking incredible infinite promotions. That was, we're not going to add any more
It's a
promotions. We're not
finality
going to do
there.
anything like that. It's just from now on, the number goes up. And I'm sure that there were more examples of that kind of thing. Just soft, nice caps to features where they can't really and don't really need to come back and add to it to say that it's done. Like they were just finishing a bunch of features.
Well, yeah,
Like
season
promotions
5
were
is
finished.
more. There's even more of that. I was like, the fact they added like new cosmetics in every department. Is kind of wild, and I think is probably a part of that.
Yeah.
I think it literally represents an entirely. It's so bittersweet because it's like an entirely new approach to seasons. That's like the perfect approach, but might also be the only time they do it.
But it's the perfect approach for the final couple seasons.
Yeah.
However long it takes for them to really kind of
Well, yeah, I mean,
nice hat
it really
on
makes sense
everything.
to have season 5 and 6 pair as the. Because look, I know that season 5 comes across as them wanting to move away from the seasons being like pairing up, and it makes especially less sense given how long the gap is going to be between 5 and 6, right? Assuming we get 6. But at the same time, when season 5 adds new overclocks, and also I'm echoing a bit on your end. Yeah, I think that means you must have some kind of volume
Possible.
on. But when they add new overclocks and it's only for the primary weapons, that is literally season 1, right? New primary weapons, but next season you'll get new secondary weapons. It's like, so that kind of needs to be basically finished almost. And in my opinion, it's only once they've added some new overclocks for the secondary weapons that they can finally put their feet up on Deep Rock, as far as I'm concerned, because that's an open-ended pairing. If you do one for the primaries, you have to do it for the secondaries as well.
Yeah.
And I want them to because why that works? Because one, it's still a small number, but the reason why it works is because it's a culmination of how long they spent with these weapons, and it's the last sort of cherry on top of each of them. Literally for each one individually. And so you've got to do that for the rest of them, the other half, the entire other half, and then you can rest. And so that is still like a primary expectation for whatever they do next with Deep Rock, even if it's not season 6. That kind of is an essential component. It's like those secondary overclocks.
Yeah.
So we kind of just got to wait for that, but it's like all these things are like adding on to the pre-existing systems, and it's all amazing, and it's kind of the perfection of what they do when you take what that is, what season 5 is, and what hopefully what Roku will be, and look at season 4 as the very bottom, right? Season 5 is what updates should be, ultimately for a game that's after 1.0, not what the seasons before that were. And obviously, Roku is a chance for us to experience again, and for so many more people to experience what Ghost Ship are like when they have a game that needs to be built, basically, but is publicly available. It is a kind of magical experience, really.
Like the amount of things they'll just add that you didn't even realize you needed, like shit like that. Like, can you like just imagine, like, and this is you and insert audience. Imagine playing Deep Rock without the bar, right? Like, we just played Deep Rock, and there was no drinks in a bar, and then they added it. And can you imagine a universe where they didn't add that, right?
No. And
A
obviously,
game without
Rocore will bring
overclocks,
over a lot of stuff.
and there were overclocks.
Yeah, Rocore will bring over a lot
Yeah.
of stuff, but they'll still, in the end, by the time it goes 1.0, there'll still have been, presumably, many cases where something's been added that you couldn't imagine not being there the entire time.
Yeah.
And that's going to be what we will have going forward once we restart the podcast that we didn't have when we first started, which is original recipe Ghost Ship, doing what they do best, and us being able to talk about it alongside them. Basically, it's like what do we think the game needs? Even just looking at what they put out as far as like roadmaps go, where it's like sort of like a bit up in the air, and find out that sounds really good. It's like an expansion on what Rocal really is. What does that look like? How do we want that to play out? And obviously, they might listen to us. They'll be listening to everyone, basically. And so we actually feel like part of a lively discussion. Unlike Deep Rock, where it's relatively pointless to outline sort of your desires for the game at this point.
Yeah.
It's something that we will only
Most of the
do
features you want
once
to be added are like impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
At this point in
Yeah,
time,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I mentioned to you recently how the shooting range is like one of those things that's been like thrown around for Deep Rock, but mostly by the players, not by Ghost Ship. But they also started it themselves by putting in a placeholder for it in the space rig, without it really being established that not that it's not possible, but that it's not feasible in a way that in a sensible way. It would be added in a really obnoxious way, no matter how they do it. But I brought it up again recently. In a game like Rocore, like easily makes more sense for there to be a shooting range. 99% of Deep Rock's build making happens in, well, actually 100% happens before you go into the mission. Most of it is going to happen during the mission in Rocore. So it's still fair to give players the chance to figure out which weapons they like, what they don't. RoboQuest is a really good example of doing this. Because like in Deep Rock, I understand why it's like basically loading into a mission, because there's so many variables attached to your weapons that are decided, and you can't really swap those out mid mission. But in Rocore, the weapons are very one note without attributes, basically. But then again, there also won't be, because there's so many attributes to consider. Like, I think there will be a lot of variety even within a single weapon because of how that works. I mean, it's very exciting. But it's just to say, they're already showing the capacity to do things with the game, with basically Deep Rock's foundation, and make sure they're doing things that they kind of didn't get around to doing before, or ended up kind of not being able to justify doing, even. Female dwarves, for example.
Out the gate. Like, it is the best example. Something that they have basically admitted would be just infeasible. Technically impossible, but would be way more effort than it's worth, even though it is still worth an amount. In Rollcore, there it is. Right there, it's already in the game. Because they thought of it and knew about it.
It's actually it's part of the other thing as well. I mean, obviously, okay, so there is obviously a massive difference between classes in Deep Rock and Rollcore. But there is still an approach. Yeah. Part of that is also the ability to make so many more classes. I think this is why the intention is to have more than even those 4, because I think it did inherently drum up a little bit of caution, where it's like, oh, they took sort of one out, right? So they have 4 at the moment. That's very Deep Rock. 4 classes.
Yeah.
Hope that doesn't persist. It seems like the plan is to make sure there is more than 4, even on the early access launch. So they've clearly taken the steps to be like, we can add potentially way more classes. And yeah, that's because they are vastly different in terms of the amount of like fixed variables a class has. But it also means, I think that's also part of the facilitating the female thing as well, like genuinely, because they've clearly taken a bit of a more character approach as well.
Yeah,
So
like,
these
they
are
probably won't
slightly more
ultimately
defined
be that unique,
characters.
like lore or voice line or anything like that. I mean, well, we know they're getting a female voice actress, but
We're trying
not
to.
inherently that like the her voice lines as the Falconeer versus whoever the next, like the Gorgon, in our assumptions, the Gorgon, they won't inherently have different voice lines. They'll just be women voice actress instead of the guy that always does it.
Yeah, they shouldn't behave differently at all.
Yeah. But then again, they might. I think that'd be cool. Even if it's only slight, which, in all fairness, Deep Rock does have that in its lightness. Driller likes saying drill 'em and grill 'em. He likes saying that. Maybe the Falconeer says fly 'em and shock 'em. It won't be original and it's not good, but, that kind of uniqueness, I think, is
Flock 'em and
welcome.
shock 'em.
But I doubt they're
It's not
going to
bad.
have, like, full family names and,
Oh, why not?
home addresses and family members you'll be able to look at, like shit like that.
Mm,
Like,
mm,
but they might have unique lines
yeah.
now and then.
I mean, the idea of having more characters is somewhat built into Roll Call already. Like they're showing a capacity to go beyond just dwarves and mission control.
Yeah,
Obviously, one of those things is just dwarves, but it's also like if they're going to get another actress, like a voice actress in, that does show an inclination to it's like we can do more potentially. Omega is very important in that equation, and is incredible. By the way, love Omega already.
Mm.
And there's even other things like, for example, the inherent like rework to the elemental system that Brocore is bringing. Right, obviously it's not bringing it because it's not going to change Deep Rocks, but it's also we're not just carrying it over thoughtlessly. Um, this is going to work quite differently from Deep Rock, where it's like so far it does kind of it doesn't baffle me because I understand why it still looks like Deep Rock, but I think it's going to be um, such a different beast. Like not even by the end of it, like so early on, even because it's going to change a lot between now and when we actually get it. By the way, even then, there'll be a lot of differences. Like there's so many things that they're prepping for, like to make the biomes feel less exactly like Deep Rock. There'll be more core biomes that they're working on and all these things. Like I think you got to be a real dense idiot to look at what is like available to like see right now from Rocore and think that's even close to the finishing line.
Not beating the DLC allegations.
Not being the DLC, yeah, sure, because every DLC has a closed alpha. Um, I hope that people understand that the benefit to it being based on Deep Rock means that the closed alpha can have less placeholder elements. That's basically all it is. It's like,
Yeah,
like it's
and it
less
still has
stuff.
some.
Yes, yeah, it does have
less.
some, but it's like some of the placeholder stuff is literally Deep Rock stuff, like the level icon, for example, like the progression icons and
It
stuff like
saved
that.
them, like, having to do that, and the ground itself, like textures like that. All right, you can, it saved the game probably another year in development, right? Ultimately,
Yeah,
like,
the fact that
that's
they
pretty
don't have
nice.
to build a foundation is going to be so useful for them,
Yeah,
genuinely, and for us to be able to play and talk about it and have fun with it, because obviously that is very much so with the present, is having a view like a version of Rocore that we can observe and have takeaways from. But also understanding, first of all, that we can't play it, but also that it is a very basic starting point at the same time. And the starting point that we will be working with when we come back, for the early access, is going to be entirely different from this as well. And that'll be one of the first ports of call. Obviously, first impressions for sure, but also like differences between it and closed alpha and how far it's gone. I mean, there's so many. I can think of a big one already. It's going to be the bosses are going to going to change quite a bit. There's still just the one in the game at the moment in Rogue Core, and it's clearly not the final model. So that's going to change a lot. But yeah, I think that's like that pretty succinctly puts into place sort of the future of both sides of this, both us and Ghost Ship. But that, yeah, I mean, we've already talked about it, and it sort of launched a lot of this discussion. But that wrench does still kind of exist. This sort of plan to go back to Deep Rock in some capacity, and it is the only sort of concern at the moment. Because it's just only
really
because
like
it's a source of uncertainty. Everything else feels more certain, but this doesn't.
I do like that Mike said that though. So I didn't know that until you mentioned it, or whoever said it. I think it was Mike, right?
Yes.
The rephrasing of it, that it is ultimately that, you know, they're not going to force a season 6 just because, but like, you know, they might, you know, they need to sit and think about it, which is true, they do. Preferably they would have done it before, but I think they were just caught up by the excitement of making a new game, and they couldn't stop themselves. And, you know, fair enough. Right? I think that's only going to lead to a better product.
I think they had to. I mean, we look at like RoboQuest recently, right? Yeah. I think we can actually talk about this. RoboQuest, obviously, it's going to be a comparison point for Rogue Core for sure, because it's just this really cool indie roguelike FPS.
I mean,
you can see why we're going to compare it.
This video about it, like,
but yeah, you can see
it's actually fairly big. Yeah,
yeah, and you can see why we're going to compare it. It's also definitely my favorite example of that. Not that I've played many; it's been literally just that and Gunfire Reborn. But I really love RoboQuest, so it's going to be a point of comparison. But what happened recently is, okay, well, obviously the game is finished, so I mean, it's not like a super bitter thing. But they also
for like a year and a bit, right?
Yeah, but they have also stopped working on RoboQuest. Did I say RoboQuest? I feel like I did.
I think you did.
I don't want to say that's so. Oh no!
RoboQuest.
But
they stopped working on RoboQuest.
Yeah, so they stopped working on It's the working part. It's the W word before it. They stopped working on RoboQuest. But not for particularly wholesome reasons. It's good that they are because they needed to. That's kind of the point. They burnt themselves out on RoboQuest, and I think that's why we're lucky. We are actually lucky in a way. Not that I'm not saying we're lucky that Ghost Ship made the decision, but I just think fate-wise, we're lucky that they're making a Deep Rock game and not something completely different. Because they were clearly starting to burn themselves out on Deep Rock.
Yeah.
So we are kind of
Quality
lucky that the
kind of proves it.
We're lucky that the thing that's dragged them out of that is another Deep Rock game, and then it does seem to have worked. It's still Deep Rock, but it still completely reignited them at the same time. And I think that's a really fortunate position to be in, because it means it can bring the same excitement, the same feeling that Deep Rock brought in its early years, without like any kind of compromise. Basically, we don't have to like force that feeling because it's like a new IP or something. It's still Deep Rock. It's just a completely new springboard for ideas and what could be in a Deep Rock game. So we're very fortunate that's the road that we get to be on.
That had gotten so like small and dim, like, you know, by about now, like season 5, 4 even, like, they really do. What can they afford to do? So many good ideas they just had to turn down because they just couldn't. Right? They just couldn't. And it's just now those ideas are there. They're like already there. Like, you know, Female Doors. It's just like they're just out the gate. Like, they're unlikely to need to do a perk overhaul rework in this one because they're going to fucking learn their mistake. You would hope.
A lot of effort into making their upgrade systems cohesive and really like primed for expansion as well. Like as the game goes on, like for more and more upgrades to be added. Like sort of figuring out this idea of like building like the decks of the bio boosters and whatnot, and what that's going to eventually look like. So they're working on it. They're basically making multiple perk overhauls in a way.
Yeah.
Like literally, because one of them is already just the enhancements, which are like the basic meta upgrades, but you still have to like equip them like manually. And there's just upgrades as you go along, which everyone gets. There's bio boosters, which are upgrades that you will have some manipulation over on the ramrod, but are still going to be things that you find as well. It's just more so a deck of what you could find, and it's just all these things. And I think it's very cool that they've been able to reignite themselves like that with something that's still a deep rock game. But to bring it back to us, we arguably have been burning ourselves by trying to keep this up while they've been reigniting themselves internally, if you know what I mean. And they're only just about getting ready to come out swinging with what the result is of them having like found the spark again. But that's still going to be some time from now. So it makes perfect sense at this point to literally, very literally, close up shop until there's something to buy. So I hope that this works as a very long-winded explanation for why we're putting the podcast on ice, basically.
Yeah, full circle.
That's kind of what this is in a way. It's that was kind of the point of it. I did want to do a thing. Yeah. I like the idea of coming up like a fake backstory, but that would be like I'd write that out, and I should. But also, first, I don't like that kind of thing.
There was nothing.
And then there was
Arrow Vision.
Arrow Vision.
We were born same exact instant as Deep Rock Galactic.
Yeah, but that's the problem is we weren't. And this is why
multiple times
this is like literally the entire issue.
Men.
We were born far too late into Deep Rock's lifetime. And that's why we need to kill ourselves so we can be born again at the birth of Rokor. Born again. But that is kind of the thing to focus on here. Is we want to like stop for a bit to give ourselves the chance to start again when Ghost Ship does, because they will be when Rokor comes out, and then so we'll do the same thing and have this new vast future ahead of us. A rogue future.
In an ideal world, will it also be even like more equipped with like PCs that can deal with
shit. Obviously the PC rig should be a sort of inherent byproduct of it anyway. I don't know about microphones. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I guess that kind of quality. Well, the thing is Mitchell's, because I gave my old mic to Mitchell. It really is that the mic records really well on your side of things. So we have the same mic. Your mic sounds really good, but for some reason when it goes through Discord, it becomes absolute shite. It completely disgustingly sounding. So basically, we would just need to record our own audios. That would be the solution to shoddy audio quality, which is what we used to do, and that was when it was real bad.
That's
but we
didn't
actually really have mics.
Know how to synchronize properly.
Well, it wasn't that bad. It was just that both of our mics were really fucking shit.
Yeah.
Well, they were, but they were. Yeah.
What's cool actually is it's actually kind of weird that they're doing this, but Rokor is partially designed to be played with a controller, as much as it is with mouse and keyboard, which is weird.
Nice.
And which is good because look, it's exactly what I'm hoping for. Because obviously, switching to PC is going to be a hill turn enough, but the feeling of it being like being a Deep Rock game, it could very easily be more lost than it would otherwise be if I had to play with a mouse and keyboard of a game that I've been playing with a controller for 7 years. So I think maintaining that through line would be very nice, because otherwise it's going to feel very odd. I would much rather use a controller than a mouse and keyboard. Obviously that makes you think about like console and stuff like that, and I still think they're wrong, by the way. I think Deep
But what,
Rock.
not adding it to
I
console?
understand it. Yeah. We know it's really. We know it's hard. We know it's really fucking difficult. But I think Deep Rock objectively benefited from
It'll just,
being on every platform
it's
from
just,
early access.
yeah, it's just it slows down their speed of working, right?
Yeah.
Um, which, you know, they've got a bigger team, so it begs the question: how fast do they intend to make stuff like nowadays, right? Like,
Well, I'm going to be keeping an eye on that because I'm sure the next like playtest will reveal how much they're capable of in a short time frame. Um, but I don't know. Actually, you know what I did do? I did actually. I had a cheeky idea that was like, why have I not done that already? Which is look at the Steam charts for the Rogue Core playtest because that's just available. Um, and the all-time peak is 117. Um, so that's yeah, we've got a number. Um,
right, so they let in about 120 people, and then some people like
so
didn't even
do you
bother.
think it's that? So do you think it's 120 and three people happen to not bother, or is it
For that,
actually
or they gave it to
100?
100 people
Yep.
and like 17 of the devs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or content creators maybe.
Oh,
Or no, it
what?
had to be devs. They'd have to be included. That they are
Content
objectively
creators, not people.
no. We're not. But no, but you're right because obviously the devs would be objectively included in that number. Okay, so yeah, it probably is about that. But so it's 100. Either way, we know it is actually. I was expecting somewhere in the range of 5,000.
I think they played it real safe first time round,
It might
which
go
because they're
up
obviously
drastically.
they really like there was a main thing they talked about in that, like, you know, after the reveal thing was we have no idea what the right number is and we're scared. But yeah, so 100 they've probably done that, and we're gonna see, you know, if they think okay we need to do a couple more than that. Like, I guess it's because right now it really is only like the gameplay loop is like the only thing you can actually analyze. Like, so many of it is still stock, right? Like, so, you know, you don't need too many people because the more people you want, you're really only looking then for bugs, right? Like, the more
And
people,
there's no
or
bugs in
like, you
Rogue
know,
Core. It's all mammalian creatures. Um,
ha ha
it,
ha,
it is weird. Well, it's also
waha.
not because some of them are very bug. It's like the head crab type fellas, aren't there? But it's like that is still going to be a really interesting thing to feel when playing. Is like the complete difference between the main horde enemies. It's like these are monkeys. These aren't big spiders. These are monkeys. These are
Okay.
monkeys. Monkey. Yeah, it's going to be weird. But it's also when they talk about stuff like that though that makes me really have so much faith in them because when it comes to the feedback they're looking for, it's really on like the systematic side. They're very clear they've got loads of stuff in like progress that is like major content, right? Like the bosses and like biomes and stuff, like the new core biomes. Like that stuff they're making anyway. That's not like unplanned. The stuff that they want to, you know, they know they're gonna need more, you know, base content, right? But then it's like, so but feedback wise, we need to know what people want out of the systems though. So progression and stuff like that. That's going to be dictated by the people, but the other content we will just make more of and be somewhat guided by what people say. But you know, as long as people like the enemies, we can have confidence that we can make more enemies that people like and just keep doing it.
Yeah.
But like you know, it's the systems that they're really looking out for. What people say, and that's right. That's what it should be. I think you know I wouldn't say they neglected systems so much, but they were too uncertain what Deep Rock was going to be systematically speaking, when they launched it basically. And I think they want a lot more certainty this time around. They can get that because they can have a bigger playtest, bigger closed alpha. So, um, hopefully, will there be some really good signs for what sort of Road Course progression will be like when we see it later on. And yeah, like I said, those are the types of videos that are more likely to happen. So like future like trailers and stuff will likely still get breakdowns. So you might see some of that. But yeah, there was one person who was excited by the fact that I mentioned in the last Tears video that we had a couple more, but I guess they're gonna have to wait a
Sorry.
bit. um,
Sorry. The silver lining is if you want to find tier lists, I'm sure we have quite a few in the backlog. If you haven't watched
Yeah, I
those,
mean, so we talked about the earliest ones. If you haven't seen that, if you haven't watched those very
the
initial perk
Wombo
tier
cut.
lists, right? No, but the perk tier lists,
I guess.
they haven't
Do you wanna-
changed. They haven't.
yeah, that's the fucking crazy thing. I mean, you want to like run through some highlights? Do you think that'll
No.
be like a good time?
No,
Okay,
yeah, I do. Yeah, I do actually.
but you said no.
Well, there's probably a lot. There was at one time I said that slur, but the Wombo
Why
cut.
would you bring that up?
The Wombo cut is something of particular merit, I think.
Like 8 hour long tier list.
Yeah,
Like I just like that we did that, and that also like 1,000+ people watched it. Right?
it's
Like,
crazy. Yeah,
yeah,
it's actually
those
really
two things.
wild. Yeah. I mean, I've got
Just
a couple highlights. Personally, there's that thing I did early on. I think I can highlight two for us, like really early, sort of poignant moments. There was a video that I made, which was my university project. Really early on,
yeah,
which didn't pan out to being like this massive thing. Unlike your sort of answer to that, almost as far as it went, as in your kind of like solo venture, which was the
yeah.
driller grenade problem. Um, I think that's been a bit of a staple. Because it's something you'll be able to refer back to as your greatest contribution. Perhaps.
My magnum opus.
Yeah, yeah. Another one would probably be just for the numbers side of things was I think it was literally the Stingtail reveal, like teaser, but it
Yeah,
got like
that's
20,000
the
views.
biggest.
Or was it actually the
Yeah,
season 4 roadmap? I think it was the season 4 roadmap actually. Sorry.
both.
Um,
Basically,
the
people were
Stingtail got
really interested in
10k,
season 4
but
until it came
but
out.
the roadmap one got 20k. So that
Yeah,
was definitely a highlight.
that
Um,
was our peak number era. Obviously, we got to interview trolls,
Interviewing
which
trolls
is
was
still
a massive
fucking
highlight.
crazy.
Yeah, it's such a highlight. Yeah, obviously, there is the very generalized, unsurprising desire that it would have done like really well, but it doesn't change. That it's like a massive highlight of doing YouTube at all was
Yeah, like
getting
we
the
got to
opportunity to
talk
do
to
that.
someone who we would never have talked to, right? It's
Yeah,
like as a person who, like, a person who made the fucking songs that I listen to, like in Spotify, like, someone
yeah,
who made my
yeah,
fucking like playlist, like, like holy shit,
yeah.
and yeah, we just
Absolutely,
talked to him,
we
got
did.
the
There's
rundown,
also
and
the
we were the
female
only
dwarf
people to as
debacle,
well.
which was a
Yeah,
Reddit video that we
fair bit
did
of
that got
drama.
like 20 likes but 14 dislikes. Um, yeah.
That's, uh,
Oh yeah, and there's actually in the same vein as interviewing trolls. Just generally finally getting access on the podcast, which is something we kind of wanted to do from like very early on when he first
yeah,
commented on one of our videos. Um, so it's kind of like definitely should do that at some point. Oh yeah, I found the Wombo cut
yeah,
again, 1.2k views. Um,
yeah.
yeah, 22 likes. So it's not actually that many likes compared to views. Is the season
So,
4 roadmap 28,892 views, 200 likes, but 49 dislikes.
yeah.
That's actually not great. That's actually not. Dislikes wise. I think there's
Yeah,
some
it's
stuff I did
just
recently that I'm quite proud of. The weird challenge that I did. Well,
mm,
actually, better than that was my season 5 overclocks like balancing video. The 3 hour one. That was actually a fully edited video. Um, Obviously you were in that a little bit in the driller section.
oh yeah.
I do see that as kind of the as far as the term can go, relatively speaking, it is a bit of a magnum opus, relative to the channel.
It's
Um,
definitely the most effort you put into a video, right?
yeah, I do remember
Which
doing
it's the same for me and the driller one.
our own overclock tier lists. Um, we did one each like separately. Uh,
Yeah,
I don't know where yours is. I think you did because I think you did it
it's like soon
afterwards.
after.
It was afterwards.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that's
because you just did
definitely
it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do my one.
yeah, and it's like my one was like cool. It had me in the thumbnail with like a monocle one. Your one is called Tyler's awful over a counter overclock tier list, and it's got a banana from Mario Kart in the thumbnail.
Yeah, I wonder who got to name and make the thumbnail for that. Wonder,
That's
wonder, I wonder,
well. Do
I
you remember
wonder,
when we
I
got
wonder.
Do you remember when we got James to make thumbnails?
Yeah, that was the. It was just one, and it was like probably the third video, maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
something that was kind of cool to do, which we'll hopefully get the opportunity to do again. Which was when we did before season 5 came out. We did like looked at our overclock like ideas because we had for the workshop we had the final
yeah,
pitches. So we looked at those, and it's like the things that we settled on. It's like what we thought our best ideas were. How likely do we think these are to be matched by what Ghost Ship does?
yeah.
Hopefully, we'll
Which
get the opportunity to do that for the secondaries. Um,
I guess the thing. I don't think they won't touch Deep Rock again. I guess that is worth mentioning. They will definitely do another update. It's just really a question of whether or not that'll be the final one. Like,
yeah,
I think they know morally they've kind of signed themselves up to do another update. They can't do a final update and not go into it knowing it's a final update, or like make the players know that it's a final update. But yeah, we're definitely gonna get that. What?
suspected spam.
Let's go.
um,
Suspected spam. Because also, it's not not many people call on a Saturday, right? It's only family that would do that. So, or
yeah,
spam.
yeah.
It's the Indian people in India are calling even on Saturdays for some reason. But yeah,
Biscuits tier list.
biscuits, tier lists. Yeah, all the Doctor Who stuff I enjoy.
Well, the fact that we cranked out
Like
a fairly accurate to our own
yeah,
opinions tier list on
fucking midnight Doctor Who
every
tier list.
episode on New Year's
Just
Eve.
realised like it'd be crazy if we it reached midnight when we did midnight. That'd have been nuts.
What if it did?
Well, yeah, it could have. That was on the table. But no, I think we got to like Capaldi was when it hit midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, because it was the New Year's superhero one, which is why it was still a bit weird.
Oh.
Um,
Yeah, it was the Return of Doctor Mysterio, a good episode,
yeah,
by the way.
a perfectly good episode.
Yeah.
Like I imagine the one coming out today could be.
Apparently,
If
well,
people are like screaming that it's
some
actually the
people
worst
say
shit
that
ever.
a lot of people say that every time that it's the best thing they've ever
Yeah.
seen. So I don't take that too seriously, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think
I think when it comes to Deep Rock and Road Core, we are good for now. Is I think the main point. Like we've had our highlights, we've
I'm
had our
not. I'm
moments.
insatiable.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
you
do
are.
the Electro Mindless hit piece.
You're fucking still making. You still play Deep Rock when like Boom is out. Like you just, I'm like Harry, what the fuck are you doing, man? How are you doing that? I'm not. I'm not even a Doom player.
Gotta practice.
I'm I'm just like playing it constantly, and you're like a Doom guy, and you just aren't. Just aren't.
I am.
Not much. What
Yeah,
level are you
I'm
on?
gonna do one level a day because I want to play Oblivion
That
as
is
well.
terrible. Don't do that.
No.
Like play the game like at all. Maybe that is. How the fuck can you play one level a day? That's like half an hour.
Because I can practice restraint. Well, I've got two like
It's not restraint. That's cuck. You're
first.
edging yourself. You're just
Yeah,
edging.
yeah,
You're like, oh, I'm really enjoying this. Let's stop playing. What the fuck? That is backwards.
yeah. But it's still an endpoint.
No, it isn't. It's a beginning point to the next level.
It is if it goes
It's
to
not
a
like,
level
oh, do you want to leave
selection
now? It's like,
screen
no,
between
you
every
just
level.
click. Yeah, but it doesn't. It's just the next level. You can only press A to go into the next level, or B to back out to the main menu. Like, just hey, play the fucking game at any reasonable pace. I do like at least 3 levels per time generally. I mean, and then Monkey started talking to me about it yesterday, so I played for like another 4.
Let me guess, he thinks it's bad for some reason.
No, he's literally beat it in the first day.
Fucking loser.
He fucking completed the entire game.
I don't want to do that. I've been looking
better
No,
than
it's not.
what you're doing. No, you can't be looking forward to a game that you only play half an hour every day. That's not how it works. If you're looking forward to it, you play the fucking game.
I want it to last.
No, you don't. You don't want to play it at all.
I know I really do though. I just don't want to burn through it. I just don't. No point.
You're not burning it at all. There's no burning going on.
I love this. It's like I love it. It's making you angry.
You see, this is the kind of passion I just can't evoke for Deep Rock nowadays. All right, that's why we do other videos where I actually have opinions and care. And your fucking backwards logic in the more you want to play a game, the less you play it pisses me off.
Yeah. It's always going to come down to the fact that I am. I am genuinely satisfied with this way of doing things.
Stupid person.
Yeah.
I love you. I'm so glad we made this channel together and raised it in our loving arms for.
Suckled it on our teats of stone. What do you mean 3? Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, 3. Well, yeah. This is the 3rd. Well, yeah, this is the 4th year, I suppose, because.
Wow.
I mean, starting on the 1st of January gives you like a really clean divider. It's like because that means we've done 2022 from the first day of that year. So we've done 2022, 2023, and 2024. We've done 3 full years. So which means we're coming up on 3.5.
We are the 5th. Yeah. 5th year, about halfway through. Yeah, we're about to enter the 6th. Wow. It really doesn't feel like it, but then again, why would it for me? For you, it might. You feel like you spent years on this channel.
Yeah. It took a while for it to not feel like we did that first video yesterday, but now it feels like decades ago. But now, which is kind of weird. I think that's predicated on the transition of Deep Rock into feeling like quite a different thing. When it stopped feeling like a game that
being
was
like
sort
a
of,
year since the last.
Yeah, that does a lot.
Update.
Yeah, that does a lot. I think to make that gap feel stranger, and more vast,
yeah,
and distant, and unreachable, and inconceivable.
Invincible.
If he's called invincible, then why can't I see him?
If he's so invincible, why does he get beaten all the time?
I mean, that's literally the point, but
it is interesting how he has stopped being beaten all the time. Like actually, like this season, he wins fights.
Yeah,
I do find that quite interesting because he still gets the shit kicked out of him, but he is actually starting to win.
I think that changes again. I mean, it doesn't change again. There's always going to be a moment that is like, the opposite of him winning. I think next one is Dinosaurus is the character who is next going to
fucking dinosaur
completely change his just rock his world, but not in a good way.
Oh yeah, like Eve.
Well, he's a dinosaur guy.
Yeah, I literally you fucking called him Dinosaurus. He was going to be.
It's like literally exactly the same as Humongousaur, but with an actual dinosaur head.
Humongous what?
Now that's an old one.
Yeah, only the
It makes me realize
classics know
how
that.
many things feel it. I always get tripped up by how long ago Deep Rock was, but how late it was at the same time. Like, you know.
Yeah, dude, I feel like Deep Rock's been around forever, but it was like quarantine. Like,
Well, it went 1.0 in 2020.
yeah.
Like what? Like those updates. Like seriously, like the update is like Rough Mix at Work and New Frontiers. Like when they added the new mission types and biomes, they feel ancient, but they were deep in the pandemic. But then again, that's because the pandemic is old now. That's because the pandemic.
Like, all I remember is like instead of like revising for my test or giving a shit about my GCSEs, I was thinking about the new Deep Rock update that was coming out and talking to you about it. Like that's like a core memory in my head.
Instead, it will be doing doing that while I
You were flipping through your
while I try and get a job, and we're hopefully talking about the next Rotor update.
yeah.
What are you about to say?
Progress, baby. You were like when I was doing that, you were like trying to actually study, and you had like study cards and shit like that because you're a fat fucking nerd.
Hold on. Bit awkward because I can't really
Actually made like revision like paper.
I mean, I can't turn the camera on Discord because OBS is already open, which is amazing. But I can show the audience my revision cards I've been making for my upcoming computing exams.
Still doing it. Still up to it. Still up to no good.
You can't actually see because of the light. You literally can't see them. In fact, I might just keep myself here. Actually, this the camera of myself. Hello, everyone.
Say goodbye.
Yeah, well, actually, you probably should
Goodbye.
wrap it up, really, shouldn't we? I think about crossed the threshold. So this was season 1 of the Barrel Vision podcast. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to see more stuff like this, wait a bit. But as always, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you very much to one member, Boxfoot Scoot.
Yeah, you're gonna have to start thanking him in your other stuff so he gets thanked.
You're right. I probably should. But either way, I'll see you on Tuesday. Tyler will see you. When will they see you, Tyler?
When I see you. I don't know.
I suppose that works.
You ever like wake up in the middle of the night and like
Nope.
there's something dark in the corner of your room? That's me. That's me. I'm there.
I am the one who knocks.
I always thought that scene was like, you know, everyone's like, oh, that's the scene, maybe that's the scene, but he kind of like loses the argument. Like,
I don't think there's any scene. I think Walter White fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And not even just like as a person.
But now, wait, that was a different song.
Like, it's weird. Breaking Bad is very compelling, and yet I can't say I find
Walter White is the bad guy.
Oh my. What? What did you say?
I don't know. I was making a joke. Harry.
So yeah, that sounded like a bit of a shot in the dark, to be honest. I don't think I could take that too seriously. Walter White, the bad guy? What are you talking about? He's the main character. Can't be a bad guy.
Yeah. I'll be a bad guy.
I like how a lot of people didn't understand Dune, like even like recently. Because it really is the most recent film, Dune Part 2, where Paul Atreides kind of goes a little bit off the deep end.
A bit off his rockers.
And yeah, most people don't seem to understand that he's not really good. Yeah, it's interesting. Some standards. Do you see they added like AI voiced Darth Vader to Fortnite?
What?
Yeah, he's like
Not surprised.
he's
I'm
just
just
as an
disappointed.
NPC, and he can like respond like to what you are like say to him like specifically. Um, and somehow he has so far said like a bunch of terrible shit, like a lot of bigoted stuff. Um,
You seen
so
that
it's
Gronk
probably
won't
not
shut
gonna.
up about some sort of white genocide going on in South Africa? Like I've just seen but I'm not even on Twitter. I just see these things on Instagram, and it's like just like Gronk responding to like a normal
Gronk.
question, and it says, and on a more serious note, the white genocide going on in South Africa, it's just completely like has nothing to do with
Grok, you
it.
can ask Grok about like whether it's programmed to like push like right wing agendas, and it like says, yeah, I was programmed to like not criticize the right as much, and like this weird shit,
Yeah,
and it's like, oh no, it's like, hell, we're in hell, but every now and
we're
then,
not in heaven.
the glimpse of heaven. It's Mickle's forehead. All right, let's wrap this. Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's get out of here. Um, any last words?
smegma.
Just like the speed of that, the immediacy of that. Wow. Okay.
The last word, smegma.
I'm glad we are. I'm glad we are done here. And basically, what we have to do when we do episode 101, the first thing you say should be
Smegma
smegma. Yeah.
picks up exactly where we left off.
Actually, we should do something like where we literally start a sentence that we can like continue, the moment the next episode starts. Um,
Right, you're gonna be ready to pause me, all right?
why would I have to pause you? Can't you just
Harry,
stop?
no, because it wouldn't be then continuing mid sentence. So you gotta cut me off, all right? Harry, ever considered that that you did it during that? Did you stop it during that?
How was I meant to know that's when you were going to stop it? What the fuck? You can't do that.
I don't know, but like it would have. I couldn't tell you when you should have stopped it more clearly because it would have ruined the point.
Tyler,
This
have,
is not gonna work.
have you ever thought about the fact that